Jeff Messer,
yes.
Ashevillean,
Yes.
host of Issues With, comic book extraordinaire fan, and now author.
Author, yes. Well, I've always been an author since I was a kid, so it's just now I'm getting paid for it, which is nice.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
being a paid author.
A paid author, right.
Gotcha. Now, Robin Hood, this is a sequel?
It is, yeah. This, in the year 2000, there was a world premiere of a show I co-wrote with Robert Akers, Robin Hood. We did it was a huge hit. We decided we would go back under the hood and tinker with it and work and perfect it and keep working on it. We decided to make it a series of plays telling the entire legend of Robin Hood from the beginning to the end. And so we started moving things around. For example, the sequel has the original last 15 minutes of the original play, which is, spoiler alert, it's the return of King Richard. So we wrote a play that tied everything up nicely, and we thought, no, we want to write more adventures, so let's take that nice ending off and move it to the end of the second play and write a whole story between the archery tournament in the first one and the return of King Richard. So that's how the second play came to be.
So like you said, Robin Hood is a character almost over 700 years old.
Oh, it's amazing. It's, no pun intended, it's kind of one of those evergreen stories where people always are attracted to the hero who rises up against tyranny, who stands up, robs from the rich, gives to the poor, fights for the oppressed. We're always looking for that in our world. We never find it, so people keep going back to something like Robin Hood.
But what could a 700-year-old character speak to our modern times?
Well, it's the simplicity of it, I guess. It's just the morality of, bad people have power and do bad things, but maybe someone should stand up to it. And maybe someone should rise up and inspire other people to rise.
Robin Hood is also, he is a man of action.
Yes.
I would say he's known for his sword and his crossbow.
His bow and arrows, yes.
Why is that significant? Anything important about the weapons he chooses or his tools? They're iconic.
The tools of the time, I guess. The character, the period that it comes from. Those were the weapons. The weapons of choice, I suppose, the weapons of warfare at the time, and to make him a character who's highly proficient at both the bow and arrow and the sword. I'm sure if Robin Hood had been created maybe in the 1950s or 60s, he would have had a howitzer or something, but I don't know. I mean, it's interesting because in the world of comic books, the character Green Arrow is very derivative of Robin Hood. And it's like in a modern superhero context, you have a guy dressed as Robin Hood shooting arrows, and it somehow still works, even though it seems very antiquated. So, I don't know. There's something about it. The sword is an up-close weapon, and the bow and arrow is kind of a sniper-y kind of weapon. I don't know.
What is your fascination with Robin Hood? What draws you to this character?
As a kid, I recently did an interview about this, and I said it was either my first experience with Robin Hood was either Looney Tunes cartoons. With Bugs Bunny meeting Robin Hood and kind of going, well, that's weird. Why is this live action thing happening in a Bugs Bunny cartoon? Or it was the Green Arrow comic book, and it made me intrigued. And as a kid, I got one of those classics, short versions of classics, like a set of them from my uncle for Christmas one year. And Robin Hood was one of them, Sherlock Holmes, Last of the Mohicans, a bunch of classic stories. And Robin Hood was the one that I really kind of gravitated toward because I was like, there's something about this. He's kind of like the original mythical superhero. Predates modern superheroes in a lot of ways. Robin Hood or King Arthur perhaps, but I think less so. I think Robin Hood is more authentically a superhero.
What's it like to write, be sitting somewhere, be writing, and then be able to watch your characters come to life right before your eyes?
It's really cool, first of all, but also it's very surreal at times because writing is, and I write with a partner when I write some of these things, and writing can be a very solitary sort of thing, or it's the two of us sitting in a room creating these characters and thinking, what's this character's personality going to be? How do they relate to other characters? And we don't necessarily know who's going to play those roles eventually. And you just kind of hope you find an actor who fits and feels right with it. But watching it come to life and continuing to work on it, we now kind of reverse engineer it. We now have actors that we've worked with who we're like, I'm going to steal a little bit of his personality and stick it into this line of dialogue because I know this works for that character in that one situation when we produce the show. So it is surreal to see it, and hear your words come to life in a way and get an audience to respond to it it's humbling, but it's also an ego stroke at the same time. So I made a joke years ago. I was like, I'm the most modest egomaniac you'll ever meet. And I thought, well, there's a conundrum to that, but it's true. If you're in entertainment, if you're an actor, you're a writer, you're doing any of those things, you've got to somehow temper your ego with a little bit of modesty. But you still have to, be proud of what you're doing and feel good about it.
So Montford Park it's one of the Montford Park Players are one of the longest Shakespeare festivals in the Southeast.
Yes.
How
almost 50 years.
How does Robin Hood fit into Montford Park? It's a beautiful place.
It is.
And it's a beautiful stage, great actors and actresses. Yeah. How does Robin Hood fit into this?
Well, it's, you're talking about an outdoor setting, so it lends itself to that very easily. It feels perfect in an outdoor setting. The folks at Montford have been around for almost 50 years, and if you know how many plays Shakespeare wrote, you'll do the math on that and realize you're going to be repeating yourself rather often and rather rapidly. And there are plenty of them that are not really worth repeating that often. Only recently did Montford complete the entire Shakespeare canon.
That's right, maybe a year or two ago,
A couple of years ago, yeah. And they started doing other things. Moliere, Peter Pan came up a few years ago.
Dickens.
They've done Dickens now every year for Christmas. And so I thought, well, the classics, and Oliver Twist and Tale of Two Cities were in that little collection of books along with Robin Hood. And so it's like this is part of sort of this literary tradition. And I saw Peter Pan here, and it was a huge success. And I just immediately I emailed John Russell, and I was like, let me know if you ever want to talk about Robin Hood at Montford, because if you're expanding beyond just Shakespeare. And what happened was with Peter Pan, with these other shows, they get larger audiences because it's more accessible to the public. They hear Peter Pan, they go, I know what that is. They hear Robin Hood, I know what that is. They hear, Shakespeare's A Winter's Tale, they're like, ooh, yeah, I'm not sure. I don't want to feel dumb when I go watch it because Shakespeare's hard. And there's a lot of people who feel that way. This is more accessible, and it's at least Shakespeare adjacent because of the literary aspect of it. So it's turned into a fairly good relationship.
One more thing.
Okay.
I'm sure you've seen the cultural attitude shift towards comic books. I mean, 30 years ago they were the fare of geeks and nerds and the outcasts. Now they are mainstream media, multi-billion-dollar. What do you think about the cultural shift in comic books? Good, bad?
It's funny because you said 30 years ago. 30 years ago is exactly when it shifted. When I was a senior in high school in 1989, the 6 months leading up to Batman coming out, all the jocks started wearing Batman t-shirts. Yeah. It was this pop culture phenomenon, and suddenly the things that a year earlier I had been stuffed in lockers over, a metaphor, I really wasn't stuffed in a locker, but you kind of get ostracized a little bit for being a nerd. Suddenly everybody wanted a piece of what I've known was cool all along, and it felt really great. And I've often joked and said, the geeks have inherited the earth. And really over the past 30 years, there have been some ups and downs, obviously, but especially in the past, 15 years, it's now all consuming, and it's a part of everybody's vernacular. Your grandma knows who Iron Man is, for crying out loud.
Yeah, that's weird.
Back in the day, they all knew who Superman was, and probably Batman, but now they know obscure Marvel characters. Rocket Raccoon is now known on site by elderly people.
The Scarlet Witch. I mean,
it's pretty amazing.
That's a stretch. Yeah.
It's amazing what's come around, but they are, in a lot of ways, I think, the mythology. Since the mid-20th century, when comic books became popularized, they became the literature and the mythology that Sherlock Holmes and Robin Hood and King Arthur and all those things were centuries earlier.